Hello, welcome. I'm Hannah, and today we're going to be talking some good, some not so good about a bunch of different indie brands. This video is basically a follow-up to a video that I posted last year where I talked about 9 or 10 brands that were on my radar, I was interested in trying out, and today, now that it's been over a year since then, I'll let you know which brands I did try out. A lot of them that I did try out were right after I posted that video, so I have like a year of reflection to tell you about. There's other brands that I still haven't tried. I can let you know if they're still on my wish list or not. So yeah, let's get into it. The first brand that I had mentioned last year was Copacetic, and I did end up making a purchase Black Friday of 2022. I posted a video about it where I eye swatched them. I had purchased 4 single shadows as well as 2 nail polishes. The single shadows were kind of a mixed bag. 2 of them I did not like, and I ended up decluttering them pretty shortly after, and then 2 of them I really liked and I continue to really like. And it's funny because often with indie brands, I'll like the most expensive formula and sometimes I don't like the least expensive formula, but I actually had the opposite experience with Copacetic. The 2 shades that were the cheapest were the 2 shades that I still keep around and I really enjoy. So in a way, although it's like a pity that I had to waste money on more expensive shadows that I ended up not liking, it's kind of like a fun outcome that I can like recommend cheaper shadows and say skip the expensive ones. The biggest saving grace from that order was the nail polishes. I bought 2 of them. So I got Santa Baby and I also got Winter Solstice. I know I've talked about both of these in several different videos, but I love them. My favorite way to wear them has been as toppers, and finding new combinations of like nail polish bases with these on top has been so fun. My favorite has to be wearing a red under Winter Solstice, and it just makes such like an interesting effect. It reminds me of the joy of like eyeshadows and combining different shadows together and getting like a new effect that you didn't even know was possible. Yeah, I love these so much. They're 2 of my favorite nail polishes in my whole collection, and I've been waiting all year to buy more from Copacetic. I could have made a purchase at any time, but I guess I had it in my head that like I ordered Black Friday of 22, it would be fun to save it for Black Friday of 23, and I did end up making a purchase. I'm not going to tell you everything that I got today because when I do get the products, I'm going to be doing an eye swatching video, but I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to see if all of the other shadows that I chose this time are going to be as good as the 2 that I really enjoy from last year. And I also got, I think, 2 more nail polishes. I wanted more, I refrained, but if I love those like half as much as I love the 2 that I already have, I'll be really happy. So Copacetic in my book is a win. The next brand that I had mentioned last year was Fantasy Cosmetica, and I did end up ordering the Druid palette, and I still really like it. I feel like every time I've mentioned this palette, I've said how I always forget to use it, but I think of it so highly. Whenever I do use it, I enjoy it, and a big eyeshadow declutter is coming up. I can already tell you this one's definitely staying, and I feel like when I have a more manageable collection of eyeshadow palettes, this will be one that I'm gonna reach for regularly. I actually have it on my eyes today, so let me zoom you in. I love this eye look. I love this so much. I use this palette for mostly the mattes. I started with Old Growth in my crease. I realized last year that this one does pick up a little bit more sheerly, but because of that, it will work for my crease if I just kind of go in carefully, which I did. And then I deepened that up and added it to the outer and the inner for a halo effect with Root. This one's a similar tone to Old Growth that I started with, but this one is a much more saturated matte. I wouldn't say they're like the most blendable mattes in my entire collection. I do think that like, you know, my crease, it's blended enough for me. It could be better, but like, it's okay. But I really like that these just, I don't know, they feel easy to work with and I don't have any fallout with them, which just makes kind of like the whole experience of putting on eyeshadow like a little bit less stressful. After I did those 2, I went in with a shimmer, which is Copacetic. This is one of the 2 shadows that I like from last year. This is Ball Drop, and that's what's all over my lid. And doesn't that look so incredible? I haven't reached for this that recently, and I forgot like how amazing it is. It has this like really intense teal sparkle, but also it looks like burgundy when it's out of the light. Really duochromatic, really special. I'm not a fan of like deep eye looks on me, but because the reflect is so bright, this doesn't feel that deep. And I just love it so much. I've really been in the habit of repeating looks recently, and I feel like this is one that I want to repeat. And then for my lower lash line, I went in with Regrowth, which is this kind of like, it's kind of like a dry metallic, but it also looks kind of satiny. It definitely has sparkle in it, but I found it works well for my lower lash line. So that's the only thing on my lower lash line, and I love the effect of it. And then Balance is such a gorgeous shadow, and I have that all over my inner corners. My only, I don't want to say regret because I wasn't working with information that I would later have, but they did end up releasing this palette with magnetic pans a couple months after I purchased it, and it would have been cool if I had it with magnetic pans. It's not the worst thing. It's not like this is a super big palette and I would like to isolate the colors that I like. I do like all of the shades in here, but it would have been nice if I waited a couple months and I got the magnetic pans. Every time they have a new release now, I am kind of looking at it and considering, but I still think this is my favorite color story out of all of the color stories that they've done. But I'll wait, and next time they release a color story that's like really up my alley, I'll probably end up buying it because of my success with this one. Okay, so not everything in this video is going to be as positive as the first two, and I always feel bad when I don't have positive things to say about small brands because I know that there's like a real person or people behind them that will realistically see content and like what people are saying about them. But at the same time, we don't owe anything to brands. My loyalty is always to consumers first, and I would much rather express my honest feelings about brands, my honest experience with products, than possibly upset someone who owns the brand. It's true with all of these that it's like my own personal feelings. Not everyone has the same feelings, of course, but I'll let you know how I feel when I feel it. That being said, the next brand is Simply Posh Cosmetics. I had placed an order with them at the end of last year. It was a pre-order. It included the Northern Lights palette that I had been eyeing from them for a really long time, and it was hard to get. It would sell out. They would say, oh, more are coming in, and then they would sell them. So when it became available for pre-order, I pre-ordered that, as well as a couple shadows from palettes that they had that they were selling individually. And you know, I think the performance of them was fine. The palette that I got, it was the Northern Lights palette, and it's all those like really like dimethicone shimmers, and they do swatch beautifully. They look really nice, but my biggest problem, as I expressed in the video called like, why is my makeup stinky? That they were stinky. And then that kind of makes me grapple with like, like where did it come from? Like, I know not every brand is like hand pressing in like a clean room or whatever, but it does give me the impression that like it's being made with things or by things that I don't necessarily feel like I want to put on my face. And that also is like a stupid opinion because it's so easy for some brands to like mask scents of things to give us the impression that they're like, you know, clean and healthy, and like maybe they are, but having a bad smell gives you the impression that it's not, which could be right or could be wrong. But overall, it just gave me a bad first impression, and I have other shadows in my collection that feel really similar. I have the original Plain Jane from Adept that maybe it's made in the same place, I don't know, but the Adept one just kind of like gave me a better experience than I got from the Simply Posh one. I know also since then they've moved away from like the Northern Lights palette, and they have like, you know, their own format of palette that they kind of keep releasing where it's like 10 mattes and like 5 shimmers in the middle, and they have like a cute little theme, and it does sound like from what I see on Instagram that people are enjoying it. But the individual shadows that I bought were from a palette that was that format, and I found the shimmer to be like okay, but I didn't like the texture of it, and the mattes to not be good, to be like very sheer and hard to blend. So I don't know. I feel like I'm the only one without a positive opinion about Simply Posh. Maybe I'll try them again in the future and I'll change my mind, but I think it's okay to have like one less brand that I'm on the lookout for whenever they have a new release. There's other people that cover them I don't have to. At the end of last year's video, I gave an honorary mention to Odin's Eye just because I was like a little bit more on the fence about them, and I want to mention them here because I had ordered shadows from them at the beginning of this year, and they came around the same time as my Simply Posh pre-order did, and they were also stinky. I know a lot of people had issues with them being like really creasy, and that wasn't really my experience. I didn't find them to be more creasy than other shadows that crease on me, like those Adept shadows, like some Luxie Dimethicone shadows, but they definitely smelled. Like that was my experience, and I didn't want to leave them in a palette with other shadows that didn't smell. I like went around sniffing all of my other single shadows, and I'm like, Clionadh doesn't smell, Terra Moons doesn't smell, Divina doesn't smell, ColourPop doesn't smell. Why do my Simply Posh and my Odin's Eye smell? And also since then, I know there's been talk about Odin's Eye actually being a brand that operates out of China. There being like reason to suspect that, which there's nothing wrong with it. You know, there's a lot of brands that do operate out of China, but it is odd if they're misrepresenting themselves to act like a Swedish brand. Even when I was looking at my video from last year to see which brands I talked about, the screenshot that I had of Odin's Eye, it said like Stockholm, Sweden as a location. I don't know if they're still doing that. I haven't checked, but they are definitely trying to give the impression that they're operating out of Sweden and, you know, misleading customers and trying to avoid stereotypes instead of like breaking stereotypes. The whole thing's just a little odd. Odin's Eye kind of left a bad taste in my mouth after that also, and at the time I don't really have any interest in trying more from them. Let's keep it going. The next brand is Touch of Glam, and I guess I feel less excited to try them also. I still haven't. In the comments of that video, a lot of people were expressing their opinions about Touch of Glam, and I feel like the overall impression that I got of them is that, like, yeah, the products are good, but the wait times are really long, and if you have any customer service issues, you might be like, SOL. And that kind of leads me to like a little bit of a moral dilemma that I sometimes have as someone who talks about eyeshadow on the internet. You know, I'm not trying to make people purchase things, but I know that my opinions do influence people at times. When it comes to brands that are a little bit like controversial or people have bad experiences with them, I don't necessarily want to be the one to encourage people to buy from a brand that they might have issues with. I think I might have tried them by now if I was still just a person who buys eyeshadow and wears it and loves it and consumes media, but as someone who creates it, I don't really want to be the one to like stand on a hill for them. What's the saying? Oh, like dying on that hill, you know? I did see recently they are starting to operate from their own website, and I think the prices are down because they're not going to be paying like Etsy's fees anymore. And they also said that the shipping times is going to be down because I think they realize that, like, you know, making people wait like 4 or 5 months for eyeshadows is a bit ridiculous. And I like those things. I think those sound like great improvements, and I feel like if I start hearing more positive buzz and less like so-so buzz about them, I could see myself trying them at some point, but right now I'm just not that interested. The next brand is one that I did try, and it's Dandelions Cosmetics. I was interested in them because for so many people in the indie makeup community, they seem to be their favorite mattes. So earlier this year, I think in the spring of this year, I think they were having a sale, and I just chose like a small selection. I got 4 mattes, and I did do a video where I tried those out. And I was a little unsure about my feelings in the video. I liked the look that I put together, but I found using the mattes for my lower lash line to be messy and like not worth the effort. But the shadows that I put in my crease, I really enjoyed how they blended and how they looked. I did end up making a second purchase from Dandelions. I never like really talked about it that explicitly, but in the summer they came out with a bunch of neutrals, and I ended up ordering 2 mattes and like a satiny shimmery color, and I really enjoy all 3 of them. Those 3 are probably my favorite that I've tried from Dandelions. It's only 7, but the first order showed me that I like them for my crease, and the second order was to buy colors that I like using in my crease. I still definitely prefer a less powdery crease color when I have the option, but I would definitely choose Dandelions over a brand that doesn't blend nicely, because the Dandelions ones do blend nicely. The shimmery-ish shadow that I mentioned getting, it's Tiramisu, and it's definitely not like a shimmer in the way that other indie brands do, but it has like that nice, sophisticated effect that I've mentioned enjoying sometimes. And if I want a look that's not like a statement shimmery eye, something neutral, it does look really pretty all over my eye. The next brand is Kaleidos, and I'm not going to go too in depth about them because I've posted 2 videos about the Escape Pod palette, one when I first got it earlier this year, and then a second one a couple days ago, where I kind of went through the motions of trying all the shadows in the palette, comparing it to my single shadows, and applying a look and seeing how they compare. Overall, I would say I understand why people enjoyed Kaleidos when they kind of like hit the scene a couple years ago, because they are doing something very different than you'll get from a palette in Sephora. The mattes are brighter, the sparkles are like piecier and less metallic. The packaging is cute and well thought out, but I just found more cons with the Escape Pod palette than pros. I found the color story to be uninspiring in use, and I found that my personal collection of beautiful single shadows is way better in every way than the Escape Pod palette is. I also did buy a couple of their lip clays, and I just feel like that formula is not for me. Other people really love them, and I think they would work well like patted out for a diffused lip look, but I really like a lip line, and the doe foots of them kind of tickle my lips. And then the final 3 are all brands that I still have not tried. The next one up is Lethal Cosmetics, and at the time last year, I think I was mentioning being interested in trying their mattes because people really like their matte formula, and also being interested in some of their multi-chromes. It seems like the consensus is that their shimmer formula is just not worth it. Their multi-chromes are not worth it to try, so I crossed that off my list, and I feel like narrowing my wish list from Lethal made me less excited to purchase from them. I still do want to try their mattes, and I still plan on it. In fact, just the other day, I was looking at the Camera Ready website. I think if they had Archetype in stock, I would have ordered it, but they didn't, so I didn't. In the past, I always felt like I needed a whole like curated cart to be able to check out, and now I'm like, I could buy one shadow. I think it's like $6.50 for that. If it's like $6 for shipping, I'm like, $12 to end the question that I've been plagued with for years about how lethal shadows are. I can do that. So that probably will be what happens. I mean, I don't know if I'll go as extreme to like literally just get one, but maybe I'll get 3. Maybe I'll get 4. Maybe I'll get 2. So hopefully by this time next year, I will have like an opinion about Lethal. I had said that once I try Lethal, I'll probably also try Carla Cosmetics because they're both available from Camera Ready, but I think that my excitement about Carla Cosmetics really has gone down, and not for like any big reason. I just think that one of the things that was so exciting about them was like their little pots of loose multi-chromatic powder, and I think I had been seeing those before I had this like big, extensive, beautiful collection of indie single shadows, but now I'm like, I would much rather use one of my single shadows than have to like apply a glitter glue and carefully apply this powder to my eyes. And then the other thing that I wanted from them was that little like the little quad. That was like the romance quad. I think that looks really pretty, but it is an astronomical price. And I think if I really tried, I could put together a bunch of beautiful quads that are similar to that, made up of shadows that I already have. So that was kind of like being realistic with myself, and I'm like, I don't need to spend an arm and a leg for shades that I already have. And then the final brand is Unearthly Cosmetics. And I didn't even realize this until I was skimming through last year's video to try to see what brands I mentioned, but I feel like they've kind of come a long way in the last year. My biggest complaint with them last year was that they would release palettes like once, and by the time it's like hitting your feed and everyone's swatching them out and making you want them, they're not available anymore and like they'll never be available again. And I just wasn't really down with that. I was like, the only way I'll get a color story I really like is if I buy it blindly, basically. Like I buy it not knowing how other people feel about it. But watching that back, I'm like, I feel like that hasn't really been their case in the last year. They came out with a couple palettes. They had like the Don't Be Jelly palette, the Fall Magic, the Sorcerer's Smoke, whatever. And I'm pretty sure those are all still available. I did have a day kind of recently that I was like sure I was about to purchase from them. They released their Dreamer palette, and I feel like that is the one that they've released that feels the most me. It feels like I'll get the most use out of it. It has some like really pretty mauves, some really pretty neutral shimmers, and I really hem and hawed for a little bit, and then I was watching reviews, and then I really wanted the Sorcerer's Smoke palette too, and I was like, the logical thing would be to buy one, and then if I love it, then buying the other one. But the funner thing to do would be to buy both and then have like a little Christmas on the day that it shows up. And if I love them both, great. Kind of like ignoring the possibility that I could dislike them both and then I just spent $120 for 2 more items in my life that I don't want. So as I was contending with that, I also started to think a little more realistically, and the Dreamer palette has several really like grayish, bluish tones that I don't think I'd use at all. And I was feeling like, even though it's the most me palette that I've seen from them, it doesn't mean it's like something that I need to have. So although I still like that, and I do still want it, and I'm still curious, it just feels like too much of a risk. And I think I'll keep waiting and see what they have in 2024. And that's going to be everything for today. I hope this was fun to watch. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. There's always way more indie makeup content on the way. I would love to hear if you've tried some of these brands or if you haven't, if you're interested in them, if you have had any of the same thoughts as I do, or if you disagree with my take. I would love to know that. Either way though, thank you so much for being here. Bye.